In this version of Iron Router, route controllers have gotten a lot more powerful. In this video, I'll start off by reviewing why route controllers are useful and how to use them, and then I'll show you some of their features. First off, let's talk about what a route controller is. You can think of a route controller as a constructor function, and we create instances of route controllers. And so we just create one route controller instance every time you navigate to a particular page. Inside of our different route functions, whether it be inside of the data function or the actual route function itself, the thisArg will point to the instance of the route controller. So for example, just to give you some more intuition, if you wanted to create an instance of a route controller, you might say var c equals new iron route controller. And this resulting object here is what this points to inside of our different route functions. Now, what happens by default is that a route controller is created for us automatically. You might call this an anonymous route controller. In other words, we haven't specified one explicitly, so it's just created anonymously. But what makes route controllers really powerful is that we can create our own route controllers and use some features that are available only to route controllers. For example, we can use inheritance, we can put our route controllers in different files, we can even put event handlers and helpers directly on the route controllers instead of using templates. Let me show you an example by converting this home route here to use our own custom route controller. By default, the Iron Router will search in the global namespace for any controller with the name of the route and then controller. So to create a new controller, we'll give it this special name and then have it extend or inherit from route controller. So now automatically when this route runs, the Iron Router will find this controller and create a new instance of it. Now any of the options that we can pass to a route or provide in the global router configuration, we can also provide as instance properties to the route controller. For example, we might here override the default action function, and instead of rendering out this page, we'll just say hello world to the console. When I save this and our app refreshes, keep your eye trained on the JavaScript console in the lower right. Now instead of rendering out the template with the right layout, it just prints to the console, hello world. Now we still get our layout because the layout is configured globally on the router, but the template isn't rendered into the page because we've overridden the action function. Now generally when you're using controllers like this, we'll move most of the options into the controller itself, except for this name option. That's going to be specific to route so that we can use link helpers with the route. So now I have a home controller that's going to have a template of blog, and we don't need to actually override the action function here. And this should return the page back to its previous functionality. Now let me show you a couple of other tricks here. So far, this controller has been found automatically for us, but we can provide the name of the controller explicitly by providing a controller option. And I can either give the name of the controller or provide an object directly as this value. And then this will tell the Iron Router specifically which controller to use. Another trick is I can specify the action as a string, and if I do that, that will tell Iron Router to use a particular method name on the controller. So for example, I might have an action called edit, and then I'll define a function here called edit. And when this route runs, now this will be the function that gets called for the route. So this can be useful if you want to use the same route controller for multiple routes. And to do that, we can just provide the name of the controller and then the particular function on the controller that we want to call for the given route. Now over in our blog template, we are iterating over this cursor called articles, and we defined this as a helper on the blog template itself, and that's why we're able to get this list of blog articles here. Now this works okay, except it's a little bit cumbersome to have these helpers strewn about your different templates and then have your route controller as a separate thing. So now a new feature in the latest version of route controllers is you can define these helpers directly on your route controllers. Let me show you. Now down here on line 27, instead of having a special helper on the blog template, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And then inside the controller, I can just create a method on the controller called articles. And that's going to be available directly inside of my template. And then what this will do is just return the same cursor that we were returning before. Another nice feature of this is that this inside of this helper actually points to the instance of the route controller itself. So this makes it easier to store properties and instance properties directly on the controller and access those from inside of helpers. If you want to get access to the data context from inside here, you can just call this .data and call the data function, just like you can in any of the other route functions. Now, one of the benefits of using controllers is it allows us to organize our code a little bit better. So generally, instead of defining the route controller right here inside of your routes or main application JavaScript file, I can take that and move it into its own file. So I've gone ahead and created a folder called both, and this will run on both the client and the server. So this is a more an application structure that would be more like a real application. And then I created a folder called controllers, and I went ahead and created a controller file for each one of our routes. Then inside of home.js, I'll paste in my home controller code here. And the router will automatically find it because this file will be loaded and executed automatically. I went ahead and added the code to the appropriate controller files, and so now I have a home controller, an article show controller, and you can see I moved over the properties from the route directly right here into the controller, and then down here the article show controller, which currently doesn't have any extra properties on it, but I created it anyway so that we can extend it in the future. Back in our main application file, now you can see our routes look a lot more organized and simpler to read. So I can quickly scan this list of routes and get a sense of all the different parts of the application. And then if I want to find all the logic for the particular route, I can go search for the controller in the controllers folder. In this video, we talked about the new route controllers of Iron Router, and we looked at some of their new features. Namely, we discussed how all the options of a route can also go into a route controller. And some of the benefits we get from using route controllers are code organization, or putting our route controllers in separate files, and inheritance, helpers that are visible from inside of our templates, and even event handlers that we'll look at in a different video. So I highly recommend that if you're building a sizable application that you use route controllers directly.